Welcome back. Newbie here. I start this part 2 of my website with some sad news. I mentioned Allen McClellan in part 1, and the fact that I had seen one of his, and actually experienced one of his very first model railroads. I mentioned that story in my local train shop to the proprietor there. He and I were basically the only ones in the store at the time, and we were just chatting about my plans. And I mentioned having seen Allen's railroad, and he said, yeah, he says, I know of Allen McClellan, and as a matter of fact, he just passed. Well, when I got home, I went into the internet, and sure enough, I found the obituary of W. Allen McClellan. And having spouted how much of an influence he had on me, I feel it appropriate to send out my best wishes to his family. Apparently, looking on the internet right here, he died on October 28th of 2022. And so I want to send out best wishes to his family and of course to my friend David, his brother. He also had another brother, Donald, who I think was about the same age as Allen. Like I say, David was much younger, so sorry about that. And anyone who has an interest in Allen McClellan, there's a nice memorandum of Allen on the web, and I'll post a link to that. Anyway, so where I am today, let me first off, let me say that I am not an expert. I really have very little experience with model railroads. If you want to learn how to do something, there's a bunch of places to learn. Don't come to me. I don't know. There's several good YouTube channels. I right away comes to mind Ron's Trains and Things. Ron is great. I've watched a bunch of his videos. I really like his presentation. He knows what he's doing. If you're interested in learning about how to do something, go to Ron's Trains and Things or others. If you're interested in learning how to frame the base for your model railroad, there's a really good source, a YouTube channel that I really enjoy watching. I'll leave a link below. M. Peter L., I believe, is the designation. But anyway, he does a real good job at framing. He's a former contractor, I think, and he does just excellent work. So where I am right now, starting with my structure framing, basically what I'm doing is, of course, taking just my existing workbench area. I was going to use on the far end, on the far east end, I have a workbench there that's basically a metal framed bench, and I was going to leave that and use the top of it. The reason my workbench is laid out the way it is so that I can lay long pieces of lumber across the different saws, and like the chop saw and the radio arm saw, and use the workbenches themselves to support the lumber. Of course, I'm not doing much of that anymore, so I don't really need that space. But anyway, what I started to say was that metal workbench on the far east end, I was going to leave and use the top of that as part of my layout base. But I have since, in looking at that space, I've decided that I'm going to have to extend that a little bit anyway, because I want to make a loop around that east end, and it needs to be a little bit wider in that area, so I'm going to fan that out. So I'm going to have to build some structure there anyway. So I decided to just pull that workbench out, move it around to the other side of the room, and use it as a workbench. I'm going to need that in the future anyway. And that gives me the flexibility to frame that out to the exact shape that I need there. I've also removed the radial arm saw. I've gifted that to my son-in-law who had an interest in it, so that's gone. I've also gotten rid of the lathe that was in the far east end of the workshop area. It's given me a little more space there, and so the photo you're seeing here, you see there's a gap where the radial arm saw was. I'm also playing with how to shape the layout, and I'm going to have this large circular area in what I'm calling the northwest corner of the layout, which is basically where the town is, and that's going to be basically the loop for the main line around the outside, and then go over toward the mountains. The mountain area is going to, of course, expand out away from the existing workbench, and so I've got that framed out to some degree. But again, now I'm not suggesting that this is the way to do it. This is just the way I'm doing it. So if you want to do a railroad, there's other sources that are much better at explaining how to do things than I. So you're asking, well, then what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Well, hopefully you'll see, or you'll be motivated. This is a motivational presentation, and I just wanted to document what I'm doing. So I hope you enjoy it. I hope you appreciate the time I'm spending doing this, and just come along and have a good time. Bottom line here, though, is I'm starting to formulate my plans. Now, there's a couple of requirements I have. Because of the shape of or the way my workbench is structured, I won't have the opportunity to crawl under the workbench very much, and I don't want to do that either, by the way. Wiring I'm going to have to do along the front edge of the benches, at least, when I get down to the point of organizing the wires. So I can't have lift out areas or any areas in the workbench or in the layout to have areas where I can basically crawl under and get to the back of the layout. So I'm going to have to be able to reach everywhere on the layout from standing beside it. Now, yes, I can take a step stool or something like that and extend my reach a little bit, but for the most part, if I can't reach it with the length of my arms from the front of the layout, it just won't work. So that's of a concern, and looking at my design right now, I think I can do that, but I have a concern in the area right as I come out of the mountain. Now I've got it shaped the way it is to hopefully be able to reach everywhere, but I'm still skeptical as to whether or not I can do that, so there may be some change to that. But now the mountain area in the tunnels, I'm going to leave all the backside of the mountain open, so I'll be able to reach in from the back inside the tunnel. So all the hidden trackage inside the tunnels will be accessible from the back of the layout. I'm just going to leave that open. I'm not going to do any finishing back there. The plan is that I'll have fascia on the front of the mountain peninsula, if you will. but the fascia would just go around to basically a line of sight right on the far west end. So that's the plan right now. I've as you see in the pictures, I've done a little bit of framing, and it seems to be that it's going to work out okay. So that's where we are today, and this is again. Let me reiterate my condolences to the family of Allen McClellan, and I've another thing I've started to I've acquired a little bit of oh, let's talk realism. I was reading somewhere, maybe online or somewhere, that people were talking about how realistic track looks, and in terms of the code of the track, and people are saying that code 55 is the most realistic in terms of N scale. And so I got some code 55 track off of one of those online websites, and and I was going to do that. I actually bought some turnouts and some track, and it looks good. Yes, it's probably, as far as the actual appearance of the track, is probably pretty good, pretty close. But the problem I'm concerned about is how the trains will actually run on code 55. And my rolling stock is probably going to be a hodgepodge of everything. I don't plan to go out and buy new stuff. And so I want to make sure that operationally it works very well. And so I think I've decided to move away from the code 55, and I think I'm going up to code 80 now, because I want it to run better. And to me, realism is really not what I'm going for. Now, nothing against the guys that are really into realism and making stuff really prototypical, but if I was going to go to that detail, I would just spend far more time than I want to, and so that's not my interest. My interest is to have a layout that is fun, that looks nice, but there's no way to be realistic, completely realistic in N scale. I mean, think about the diameter of the railings on the locomotives. There is no way to make that railing on a locomotive anywhere near a realistic diameter. It just can't be done. N scale is too small, and there's so many things that are just going to be too small in N scale, and the realism in terms of N scale is 1/60th. I'm sorry, 160th scale, 1 to 160, I believe. But anyway, to do something in that scale and make it completely realistic is pretty improbable. And so, having said that, and the other thing too, switch machines. I bought some Pico turnouts. I was going to use those, and I was going to mount under table switch machines, which, by the way, getting under my table and installing those switch machines in a lot of the locations is going to be really difficult. And so I got to really seriously thinking about that, and I've decided to just move away from that completely. And so now I'm just going to go with the Atlas style, the on top of the layout switch machines. Yeah, I'll wire down through the layout, but I've gotten away from the idea of using the tortoise type switch machines and mounting them under the layout, for the main reason of just getting access to them, but also they're very expensive. You know, a tortoise machine costs what, like $35, and if I'm going to have as many as my plan is right now, that's just not economically feasible. So I'm going to go with the remote Atlas style machine switches. And so yeah, they don't look prototypical because the switch machine will be on top of the layout. But the bottom line is this makes more economic sense to me. So back to realism. Yeah, realism is not my real desire. My desire is to have a layout that looks okay, if you will, and is fun and easy to operate. And so if you want realism, go somewhere else, I guess. But anyway, so that's where we are today. And you know, I've, like you can see, I made a little progress with the the framing of the layout. It still remains to be seen how it's exactly going to turn out, but we're starting the project. So let's see what happens.